Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're diving deep into Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. This book really takes us on a wild ride through the entire history of our species.
Yeah.
From, those early days as hunter-gatherers to where we are today.
And maybe even offers us a glimpse into the future, too.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you give us like a quick overview of the book? What's the central argument? And what are some of the key ideas Harari explores?
Well, one of the things that makes this book so fascinating is that Harari argues that three key revolutions have shaped humanity: the cognitive, the agricultural, and the scientific.
Oh, interesting.
Each of these revolutions kind of increased our power to shape the world around us, but they also brought new challenges and even dangers.
So it's like a double-edged sword kind of thing?
Exactly. It's like leveling up in a video game. You get more abilities, but you also have to face tougher enemies.
I like that analogy.
Right.
So how does Harari connect these revolutions to the overall story of humankind?
Well, he uses them as a framework to explore not just what happened in the past, but why those events matter for us today. Like how these revolutions impacted everything from our diet to our social structures, even our empires, religions, and even our understanding of happiness.
Wow, that's pretty big scope.
It is, and it's one of the things that makes Sapiens such a thought-provoking read.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, before recorded history, humans were around for like 2.5 million years. It's hard to even wrap my head around that kind of time scale.
It really is. For the vast majority of our existence, we were just one animal among many.
Right, just trying to survive.
Exactly, until something remarkable happened, the cognitive revolution.
Okay, so tell us about that.
Okay.
What was the cognitive revolution and why was it so important?
Well, around 70,000 years ago, something changed. Sapiens developed the ability to think abstractly and to believe in myths.
Myths like, you mean like stories about gods and goddesses?
Yeah, exactly. Things like gods, nations, even corporations.
Huh. So these things that don't physically exist, but we believe in them and they have power over us.
Exactly. And this ability to believe in shared myths allowed us to cooperate in large numbers. It allowed us to outcompete other human species like the Neanderthals.
So it's like our imagination became our superpower.
In a way, yes. It allowed us to build societies, create art, and ultimately shape the world in ways that no other species could.
That's incredible to think about.
Ah,
It makes you wonder what would have happened if Neanderthals had survived.
it does, doesn't it? Would their world be that different from ours? Would they have their own versions of art, religion, and technology?
Who knows? But it's a fascinating thought experiment. Okay, so we've got this cognitive revolution happening and humans are starting to think in new ways. What happens next?
Well, one of the more surprising things Harari highlights is the importance of cooking.
Cooking. You mean like with fire?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I love a good barbecue, but I don't see how that could be a major turning point in human history.
Well, it might sound kind of silly, but cooking was a game changer. It allowed us to eat more diverse foods, spend less time chewing, and some researchers even believe it helped our brains grow bigger.
Hold on, less chewing equals bigger brains. Tell me more about that.
Well, the idea is that cooked food is easier to digest. This means our bodies could extract more nutrients and energy from it. And since our brains are huge energy consumers, that extra energy might have allowed them to grow larger over time.
So you're saying that my love of a good medium rare steak might actually be a sign of my evolved intelligence.
Perhaps. But joking aside, there's some evidence to support this theory.
Fascinating. Okay, so fire helps us cook food, which in turn helps our brains grow bigger.
Okay.
And bigger brains lead to more innovation and advancements.
It's like a positive feedback loop driving us further and further away from our animal ancestors.
Okay, so fire is clearly a big deal. What else did it allow us to do?
Well, aside from cooking, it gave us a whole bunch of other advantages. It provided warmth and light, protected us from predators, and it even allowed us to reshape the landscape by clearing forests and creating grasslands.
So fire wasn't just a tool, it was like a force multiplier.
Exactly. It gave us power over nature, a power that continues to this day.
And a power that has had both positive and negative consequences for the planet.
No doubt about it.
Okay, so humans are spreading out, mastering fire, cooking their food, and getting smarter. What's the next big development in our story?
Well, as sapiens spread across the globe, they left a trail of megafauna extinctions in their wake.
Megafauna. Those are like giant animals, right?
Yeah, exactly, like giant sloths, mammoths, saber-toothed cats.
Wow, imagine encountering those creatures.
It must have been both amazing and terrifying.
Makes you realize how much our impact on the planet goes way back.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're cooking, we're hunting, and we're starting to have a major impact on the planet.
And then about 12,000 years ago, another revolution occurs, the agricultural revolution.
Okay, so this is when we start farming, right?
Exactly. And it led to settled life, larger populations, and the rise of complex societies.
But Harari also questions whether it was really progress.
He does. He calls it the luxury trap.
The luxury trap. What does he mean by that?
Well, the idea is that once we got used to having a steady supply of food from farming, we became dependent on it. We worked harder, faced new diseases, and became vulnerable to things like droughts and famines.
So it's like we traded the freedom and flexibility of the hunter-gatherer lifestyle for a more secure but also more risky existence.
In a way, yes. It's a trade-off that has shaped human history ever since.
So agriculture was a mixed blessing.
Definitely.
It led to some amazing things, but it also came with its own set of challenges. Okay, so we've covered the cognitive revolution and the agricultural revolution. What about the third one, the scientific revolution?
Oh, well, that's a whole other story, and one that we'll have to save for the next part of our deep dive.
All right, fair enough. But before we go, can you just give us a little teaser about what the scientific revolution is all about?
Well, in a nutshell, it's about embracing ignorance.
Embracing ignorance. That sounds counterintuitive.
Well, it's about acknowledging that we don't know everything.
Yeah.
And using observation and experimentation to learn more.
So it's about questioning everything and being open to new ideas.
Exactly. And this approach has led to some of the most incredible advancements in human history, from the laws of physics to the invention of the internet.
Wow, that's quite a legacy. Well, I'm definitely intrigued to learn more, so stay tuned, folks, for part 2, where we'll delve into the scientific revolution and explore its impact on the future of humanity.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Before we jump into the scientific revolution, I thought it might be fun to dig into some more of those fascinating details from the earlier parts of the book.
Oh, I'm all for that. There were so many moments where I was like, whoa, I never thought about it that way before.
Me too. Like when he talks about those early sapiens burials, he uses those archaeological finds to paint a picture of our ancestors' social structures and belief systems.
Yeah, it's like we're getting a glimpse into a lost world.
Right. He describes this one burial site in Russia, Sungir, I think it's called. It dates back like 30,000 years, and they found these skeletons adorned with thousands of ivory beads and all these intricate artifacts, thousands of beads. Can you imagine the time and effort that went into creating those?
It's mind-boggling. And it suggests that this wasn't just a random burial. There was a real sense of ritual and symbolism at play.
Right, like they believed in something beyond this physical world.
Exactly. And the symbolism is key. It gives us clues about their beliefs, their fears, their hopes. It's like a window into their worldview.
And it makes you realize that our modern worldview is just one way of seeing the world, not necessarily the only way or even the right way.
Totally. And speaking of different worldviews, another thing that really struck me was how Harari talks about these imagined orders and how they shape our reality.
Imagined orders. What are those again?
Well, it's kind of a big idea, but basically it's the idea that things like nations, laws, religions, money, they don't exist objectively in the natural world. They're human creations stories that we've collectively agreed to believe in.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it.
He uses the examples of the Code of Hammurabi and the American Declaration of Independence to illustrate this. Those are two very different documents. One's from ancient Babylon, and the other's from the founding of the United States.
Right, and yet they both claim to be based on universal principles of justice, but they offer completely different visions of what justice looks like.
So it's like they're both telling a story about what's right and wrong.
Exactly, and those stories have a huge impact on how people live their lives.
So are you saying that these foundational documents that we hold so dear are basically just stories?
Well, they're powerful stories, but it's important to remember that they're still human creations.
That's a pretty mind-blowing thought.
It is, isn't it? It makes you question everything.
It kind of does.
Yeah.
So what are some of the imagined orders that shape our lives today?
Well, that's a good question. I think a lot of our social norms, gender roles, career expectations, even the concept of success itself, these are all things that we take for granted, but they're really just stories that we've been told.
So it's like we're living in a world built on these shared narratives.
Exactly. And those narratives have real-world consequences.
Yeah, for sure. They determine who has power, how wealth is distributed, even how we view ourselves.
It's all connected.
This is making me think about all those things we just accept as true without even questioning them.
That's exactly the point. Harari wants us to wake up to become more aware of the narratives that are shaping our lives.
So it's about being more conscious and intentional about the stories we choose to believe in.
Absolutely. And it's not just about individual narratives. He also talks about how these imagined orders have driven the unification of humankind over millennia.
Like how money created a global marketplace and how religions have spread across continents.
Exactly. And then there are empires.
Empires. Does Harari see them as a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's complicated. He acknowledges that empires have played a role in spreading ideas, technologies, and trade networks.
Right. But they've also been responsible for a lot of violence and oppression.
No doubt about it. He talks about how empires often impose their own imagined orders on conquered populations, suppressing local cultures and beliefs.
It's like cultural imperialism.
Ex-
And is that something that's still happening today?
Oh, absolutely. Think about the dominance of Western culture and media around the world. It's a subtle but powerful form of influence.
So how do we navigate this tension between cultural diversity and globalization?
That's a big question. Harari suggests that recognizing the shared humanity of all people is a crucial first step.
So focusing on what unites us rather than what divides us.
Exactly. Especially now when we're facing global challenges like climate change and artificial intelligence, we need to find ways to work together or we're all going to be in trouble.
Yeah, he's got a point there. It's like we're all in the same boat now.
Exactly. But I think we're getting close to the end of part 2 here.
Okay.
Before we move on to the scientific revolution, I just want to leave you with this thought. Money, empires, religions. These have all been powerful forces in unifying humanity,
Right.
but they've also created their share of problems.
So what's the alternative?
That's the question Harari wants us to wrestle with as we move into the scientific revolution and explore its implications for the future.
All right. So we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Sapiens. And we're ready to tackle the big one, the scientific revolution.
This is where things get really exciting because the scientific revolution isn't just about new inventions and discoveries. It's about a fundamental shift in how we think about knowledge itself.
Okay, so you're saying it's more than just learning new facts.
Yeah, exactly. It's about a new way of approaching the world.
So what was this new way of thinking?
Before the scientific revolution, knowledge was mostly based on tradition, like what the ancients said or what religious texts taught. But the scientific revolution shifted the focus to observation and experimentation and the pursuit of evidence.
So it's about questioning everything and testing your assumptions.
Right. It's about being open to the idea that you might be wrong.
And that we don't have all the answers.
Exactly. That's what makes it so revolutionary.
Yeah, so what were some of the big breakthroughs that came out of this new way of thinking?
Oh man, where do I even begin? The laws of physics, the invention of the printing press, the discovery of microorganisms, the list goes on and on.
It's hard to overstate how much the scientific revolution has shaped our world.
It really is. It's the foundation of modern science and technology.
But as we've been discussing throughout this deep dive, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right. So what are some of the ethical challenges that come along with this newfound knowledge?
Well, Harari talks a lot about the potential for biotechnology to reshape humanity.
Yeah. Things like designer babies, genetic engineering, even the quest for immortality.
It's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is. And it raises all sorts of ethical dilemmas.
Like who gets to decide what's right and wrong?
Exactly. And what does it even mean to be human in an age where we can manipulate our own biology?
These are big questions.
They are. And there are no easy answers.
But there are questions we need to be asking.
Absolutely, because the choices we make today will have a huge impact on the future.
So Harari's book is like a wake-up call. It's a reminder that we need to be thinking carefully about the implications of our actions.
Yeah. We're no longer just passive observers of history. We're actively shaping it.
So what kind of future do we want to create?
That's the big question, isn't it? Harari doesn't give us a blueprint, but he does encourage us to think about the values that should guide us.
Like, what does a meaningful life look like in an age of artificial intelligence?
Yeah. And how do we ensure that technology serves humanity rather than the other way around?
It's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's an exciting time to be alive.
Hmm.
We're at a crossroads in human history, and the choices we make now will determine the course of our future.
So we need to be having these conversations about the kind of world we want to build.
Exactly. It's not just about technology. It's about values, ethics, and our vision for the future of humankind.
Wow, that's a powerful message. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, from the cognitive revolution to the scientific revolution and everything in between.
It's been an incredible journey through the history of our species.
It really has.
And I think Harari's book gives us a lot to think about. about who we are, where we've come from, and where we're going.
I couldn't agree more.
So to everyone listening out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Sapiens. We hope you found it as thought-provoking and fascinating as we did.
And we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep imagining, because the future is ours to create.
That's right. Thanks for listening, everybody.